It feels like every day I'm seeing headlines of climbers setting the most difficult boulder problem on the planet. Maybe not headlines. Climbing doesn't often make breaking news, but I'm seeing on Instagram posts by climbers that I follow. Dozens of V16s sent in the last decade, 14 V17s as of the filming of this video. Even a proposed V18 was just sent the other month. Elias Ignema's send of V18 Exodia got me thinking. Where did this all begin anyway? What was the first V1, V3, or V10 boulder problem? I went off to find those answers and have compiled it all in this tightly packed 10-minute and 46-second video. So sit down and start taking notes, because this may as well be history class, and I may as well be famous historian Mr. History. You may think of plastic holes in climbing gyms when I say bouldering, but you'd be pissing me off if that's how your brain works. You see, the origins of bouldering are where all good things come from. War. What is it good for? Well, not a whole lot, but it is good for innovation because everyone is scared out of their minds. Without the gift of war, we wouldn't be able to write with ballpoint pens, eat food out of cans, fix our broken car bumper with duct tape, watch this very video on the internet, or rock climb. One of the earliest examples of rock climbing comes in 1492, when King Antoine de Ville used castle siege tactics to ascend Mount Aguillet, a 300-meter rock tower near Grenoble, France. Although in the 1400s we saw soldiers climbing rocks when taking orders from their generals, we wouldn't see athletes climbing rocks taking orders from their coaches for much longer. Recreational rock climbing didn't emerge for another 400 years. The year was 1908. The first subway tunnel connecting Manhattan with Brooklyn under the East River opened in New York City. Henry Ford introduced the Model T car to millions of people across the US. Albert Einstein presented his quantum theory of light, which if they've just given me some time, I would have gotten to it. But most importantly, Jacques Herlin established the first recorded boulder problem in one of the most famous bouldering crags, Fontainebleau, France. The boulder problem was called La Fisher Herlin and is graded V0 plus or 3 on the font scale. Bouldering in general had begun earlier in the late 1800s, mostly being used as a training method for rope climbing. But this was the first recorded boulder problem. Climbing today won't feel like what you think of as a V0 now. Some would call this sandbagged, which older climbs often are due to the grading scale having a much smaller cap at the time. Let's fast forward to the year 1946. Nearly 40 years passed since the first boulder problem was recorded. It's difficult to know the very first V1 boulder problem, but we do know the general time that it happened. This isn't to say that they weren't sending V1s before the 1900s, just at this time there wasn't yet a system to declare it as a V1 or a way to make records of it. The V grade scale is still relatively new. It wasn't set in place until the 1980s when John Sherman was developing a guidebook for Hueco tanks in Texas. The rumor is his editor demanded a difficulty scale for the wider public to better understand the guidebook. And so Sherman, whose nickname was Vermin, or Verm for short, made the V grade scale, V standing for vermin. And the other most popular boulder grading scale is the font scale, which starts at the number 1 and then moves up from there, with each digit being more difficult than the last. For the font scale, each number is also broken up from A through C, 7A being easier than 7C. The font scale was developed before the V-grade scale, but still not until the 1960s. And because of that, it's often difficult to know for certain when the first grade of a certain difficulty was, which makes this video very easy to make, and me really smart for trying to cover this topic. Although it's unclear when the first V1 boulder was sent, we do know the first V2. L'Angle Alain, which translates to Alain's Corner, is also in Fontainebleau, France, and was sent by Pierre Alain in 1934. Let me know how I'm doing on the pronunciation so far. Pierre was one of the pioneers of bouldering. He began climbing in the 1920s, and in the 1930s he developed the PA boot, which was the first rubber-soled soft shoe specifically engineered for rock climbing. But his innovations didn't end there. He also developed rappel devices, down jackets, and carabiners. 12 years later, the first V3 was sent by René Ferlet. And could you guess where this boulder lies? Bingo bango, you're right, kiddo. That is if you said Fontainebleau. If you said the Empire State Building, then you're really not paying much attention at all. Focus up, okay? I know you probably have this video going on in the background while you're looking at the instructions for that IKEA shelf you bought back in February of last year. It's been almost a year and it's not even out of the box. How do I transition this back into talking about the first V3 after that? Like this. Marie Rose is known to be one of the trickiest V3s in the world. So tricky that even Adam Ondra fell on it. But to be fair to Adam, he wasn't able to lie down in his deprivation tank and visualize the climb for hours like he usually does. Oh no, you know what that noise means? It's time for the speed round. All right, let's set the clock for however long it takes for us to get to V8. 1, 2, 3, let's go! The thimble was the first V4/V5 sent by John Gill in 1961. It's a 40-foot high ball in South Dakota. The first V6 was the Joker in Fontainebleau in 1953. It was sent by Robert Paragot. Other legendary V6s were developed in the 1950s and 60s at Stony Point, a historical crag right outside of Los Angeles, California. Stony Point was a training ground for climbing pioneers like Royal Robbins, Yvon Chouinard, John Backer, and myself. Here's a video of me climbing there in 2020. Don't mind the mask or the really tight pants, it was a weird time for everyone, okay? Oh no! We're running out of time. Quick, we gotta move on to the first V7. Oh, shoot. We're out of time for the speed round. right before we got to the first V7. And no, the time definitely didn't go out right now because during my research I couldn't find any information on what the first V7 would have been. That's crazy. I don't know, let's throw up Swing Dance, the first V7 I ever climbed. Look at me go, pioneering my way through the softest V7 I could find. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing. I've got more niche climbing videos on my channel and more on the way. One of my favorite videos I've made is this one discussing competitive climbing and why you should watch it. It's one of the few sports I actually watch, and in the video I give you 5 reasons to convince you it should also be a sport you watch. Check it out after you finish this video. Okay, now back to the video you actually chose to watch. The first V8 is the Gill-Wright problem, another iconic boulder problem by John Gill, set in 1958. But there's one more V8 I'd like to focus on. Maybe the most famous boulder in the world, Midnight Lightning in Yosemite, originally sent by Ron Koch. Midnight Lightning sits at Camp 4 in Yosemite on the Columbia Boulder. It's believed the line was discovered by John Yablonsky during a drug-induced walk, but John Backer and Ron Koch were the two to break this boulder, each of them racing to be the first to send this stiff V8. It was the mantle move that had given them so much trouble, which sits 16 feet from the ground. In 1978, Koch was the first to send the boulder, and Backer quickly followed with his own ascent. A chalk-drawn lightning bolt was put on the boulder, referencing when Koch and Backer first saw it, saying, "There is about as much chance of doing it as there was the chance that a lightning bolt could strike at midnight." And unlike Marie Rose, the V3 and Fontainebleau, Adam Ondra didn't fall on this one. Round of applause for Adam, everybody! The first V9 and V10 were also sent by none other than John Gill. We've entered the Gill era! Make those noises for real. And do like lights and stuff. This is Nico in the future. I didn't do that. That joke doesn't work. I think I was just really tired at this point. Okay, back to the video. We've entered the Gill era! Red Cross Overhang in the Teton Range in 1959 and the Groove in Pueblo, Colorado in 1978. It took nearly 20 years to go from V9 to V10. Looks like Mr. Gill hit a bit of a plateau in the 1960s. Did you not know about hangboarding, weighted pull-ups, or antagonistic training? Oh, and I bet you're gonna say hangboards weren't invented until the 1980s and climbing gyms weren't prevalent in the US until 1978. Those are just excuses. A real climber doesn't need all of that. I certainly don't. Let's go ahead and show my first V10. It may have taken 19 years to break through to V10 from V9, but only 6 years after John Gill sent the first V10, we saw the first ascent of a V11. In 1984, Jackie Goodoff sent Cité du Mont in Fontainebleau. Jackie projected Cité du Mont for 6 months before sending the boulder problem. But only 4 years later in 1988, Alain Gerson sent the first V12, La Platte du Gain in Fontainebleau. Or so you may think. You see, at the time, La Platte du Gain was the first V12 boulder problem. But you have to remember, boulder grades are written in sand, not stone. With grades being subjective and changing over time, we have 2 boulder problems that have since had their grade adjusted to better fit the difficulty of the climb. Jim Holloway sent both Trice and Slapshot in 1977. Both of these climbs were originally graded below V12, but as they were both unsent for years, Trice not seeing another send for 32 years, the grade needed to be adjusted. Slapshot now is often even considered V13. Another thing to consider is that over time, the rock can change. Thousands of people climbing on the same route for decades and decades can polish the holds on the boulder, making the rock slicker and more difficult to climb. Not to mention the chance of the holds altogether breaking off, changing the route forever. The next section of the video, I would like to declare the Fred Nicole era. From the 90s to the early aughts, Fred was breaking boulder grade after boulder grade. Fred is a Swiss climber who pushed the sport of bouldering in ways no one had before. This era began with the first V13, La Danse des Belrags. Keith Bradbury once said when describing the boulder, 5 hours of driving to this one single boulder in the Rhone Valley to climb that one piece of rock, and it's all worth it. It's totally worth it. But that kind of sums up all of bouldering to me. Driving hours, parking on the side of the road, hiking up to some random boulder that to a regular person looks just like all the others you passed on the hike up, only to arrive at the boulder and fall in the same move over and over and over again until your skin is so far gone you need to go home. La Danse des Belrags would later be debated if it was a true V13 or if it should be downgraded to a V12 when new, easier beta was discovered. In the end though, if you show me a photo of a V12 boulder and a V13 boulder, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. That's for the pros to figure out, not a guy in his LA apartment on a Thursday night at 11:30 p.m. who wants to desperately go to sleep. But this was just the beginning of the Fred Nicole era. In 1996, Fred sent Raja, the first V14 in the world. And this time there was no debate. When describing his effort on the climb, Fred said, "Once I had the move figured out, it took me relatively little time, like an hour over 3 tries. To climb the first V14 and then go, actually, it's not too hard, is wild. That's like winning Jeopardy and being like, questions were kind of simple." Imagine that's the comparison I made. To me, sending the first V14 in the world is the equivalent of winning Jeopardy. Except not at all. Actually, it'd be more like if people were trying to win Jeopardy, but no one had been able to win yet, and then someone finally won Jeopardy, after like, I don't know, a couple tries. And then they were like, actually, it was easy. Then the comparison makes sense. But thousands of people have won Jeopardy, and a lot fewer people have climbed V14. This isn't even where Fred Nicole's era ends. 6 years after sending the first V14, he went and did the impossible by sending the first and second V15. In August of 2002, Fred sent both Monkey Wedding and Black Eagle SDS, 2 V15s in 1 month. That is absolutely diabolical and concludes the Fred Nicole era. That makes it sound like he's dead. He's not. As far as I know, he's doing great. He's 55 and climbing harder than I ever will. I remember when I started climbing, I would hear of people sending V15s. Not like people I knew. If you climbed V5 in my gym in Iowa, you were one of the strongest climbers in existence to me. But V16? I never even heard whispers of someone climbing that, even though it was happening. It was so rare and unfathomable what it would even look like. Joya was the first V16 sent by Christian Core in 2008. What a good year that was. The first V16 sent and the entire world was in perfect balance. But unlike the rest of 2008, Joya comes with some ups and downs. In 2015, when Dave Graham and Daniel Woods were attempting the boulder, new chipped holds were discovered. Christian made attempts to restore the holds back to their original state by gluing rock back on, but admitted even with this restoration, the climb had become slightly easier. We didn't see another repeat until 2021, when Elias Iagnema sent Joya and confirmed that it should now have a slightly lower grade. And I'm sure that's the last we'll hear of Elias Iagnema. I say, the person who wrote the script for this video, knowing we'll be talking about him in just a few minutes. This brings us to the first V17. We're really getting into it now. Burden of Dreams, one of the most talked about boulders in recent years. Not because of the first ascent, but because who would be the first to repeat the climb? Nale Hukatavale sent Burden of Dreams in 2016, and we wouldn't see a repeat of it for 7 years. It's 13 feet, heavily overhung, and you're crimping on microscopic holds. It's only a few moves, but so intricate and technical that everything must go perfectly right. Will Bosey, a Scottish climber, was the second person to send the climb in 2023. He created a near 1-to-1 replica of Burden of Dreams, using 3D printed duplicates of the key holds, which others would later follow suit when training for the climb before going all the way to Finland. Remember when I mentioned Elias Iagnema like 1 minute ago? Well, it's time to talk about him more because he just climbed Exodia, which he proposed to be the first V18 in the world. It was originally a project by Christian Core, who sent the first V16. Elias initially feared the climb was impossible after hearing Core had failed to send it. Just to put into perspective how hard this climb is, Elias has sent 2 V17s previously. Aforementioned Burden of Dreams, which took him 25 sessions to complete, and Big Slam, which took him 35 sessions to complete. Do you want to guess how much longer it took him to do the first ascent of Exodia? Maybe 50 sessions? 100 sessions max, right? It took Elias 211 sessions to send Exodia. Over 4 years of work. It was the main focus of this man's entire life during this time. It's a 60-degree overhang, 25 moves. The boulder is broken up into 2 main sections. The first being extreme compression on slippery holds, which goes at V14, and the second section being a mix of slopers, tiny crimps, and heel hooks, which goes at V16. Put that all together and you got the first proposed V18 boulder problem. It's as easy as dedicating your entire life to rock climbing and sacrificing 4 years to one climb. Now, it's important to note that this is just a proposed grade by Elias. It could be a while before someone repeats it and is able to confirm it's true to its grade or not. We've seen so many boulders downgraded over the years and even some upgrades, so for now, we just have to wait. And that's where we end. There are some other potential V18s in the works by Aiden Roberts, Sean Rabitou, and probably some other absolute crushers, including myself. Let's throw up the footage of me working on my V18 project, looking strong as hell. Oh, come on.